Emilia Clarke wants back in. Sorry, Game of Thrones fans. Not you. Star Wars. Qi'ra. She wants back in. Welcome back, everybody. This is the Resistance Broadcast. I'm John. You know that stuff makes me happy. Thanks so much for joining us today. Yeah, we're going to get into that story in a little bit. I'm sure a lot of you have already heard that. You saw the episode title, so you could probably figure we're going to talk about that a little bit here. But this is our news show, and I hope everyone's having a glorious Monday. If you have the Monday blues, it's our job to help you throw them out. Get rid of them. Goodbye, Monday blues. And doing that with me, as always, is James Baney and Lacey Gilleran. James, Lacey, Carrie Fisher getting a star on the beautifully crisp and clean, shiny and sparkly Hollywood Boulevard Walk of Fame. Thoughts?
Yeah, I saw this, and I saw that it was kind of weird because there was like some weird ineligibility thing and stuff. I don't know. I'm obviously down. I just know that there was like some weird like hangups and stuff with them, like having to work stuff out with her like estate kind of thing. And I think it's a cool like honorary title. Like I think like I don't really know that much about the Hollywood Boulevard and the Walk of Fame and stuff. Like it reminds me of like Joey and the laundromat. It's like, at what point, how big do you have to be before you can get your picture on the wall kind of thing? Like, how many stars are there and how far do they go back? Because, like, in my head, obviously anybody who was in Star Wars would be eligible for that, you know, but it's tricky because obviously there's so many different facets of fame and Hollywood, you know, so, but I'm down. Obviously, this is great news in my opinion.
Yeah, it's surprising it took so long because she just seems like one of those staples in Hollywood that you're like, oh, she was a part of this thing that was so gigantic and still remains gigantic 40 plus years later. It's just surprising that it took so long.
My theory on it is because, you know, the truth about these things is that they're not like awards. There's not like a committee that says, and this year we're going to honor blank. You have to apply for them, for one thing, and they're paid for. You have to pay for them. Mm-hmm. And the head of the committee, this was like after, I don't want to get political or anything, but after Carrie Fisher had died, and, you know, all the Trump stuff was going on, people were like, replace his star, give it to Carrie Fisher. I think Mark Hamill said that. But it's not, you know, it's not like that. And, you know, the president of whoever's in charge of these things, the Hollywood Walk of Fame, whatever, said Carrie Fisher never applied for one. Huh?
My neighborhood, by the way, if you hear noises, my neighborhood, all the kids graduated school this week, so they're all partying outside.
So it's Andor.
So there's literally an air horn going off.
Victory celebration.
It was your cat. No joke.
House.
I was like,
no, it's an air horn, like a ship air horn next to my house.
All right.
Anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Here at TRB. No, the president of this association had told the LA Times a couple years ago that Carrie Fisher had never applied for one. She had never expressed interest in having one. And, you know, all the stories about Carrie Fisher kind of being this sort of rebel and this renegade and not really interested in that idea. And she was buried in a oversized Prozac pill. Like she's a very, obviously a quirky, beat by her own drum sort of person. And I could see her not. No, she clearly wasn't that interested in this sort of thing. Now, her family, if they want to honor her and her legacy, I completely get that. And she probably would have accepted it gracefully because that's who she was. But she probably would have made a joke like, well, people have been walking on me for years. What's another, forever.
I believe her mom has one, too.
Debbie Reynolds, yeah. So I just think it's the Walk of Fame thing. Anytime I hear it, I get a little crazy because I like facts and stuff like that. And people think these are like the Oscars where people just, you won this time. And people are like, wow, it's been so long. Carrie Fisher just never applied for one. But it's also cool that she's going to be there. And, you know, hopefully her spot's going to be clean. I know Hollywood Boulevard's not the cleanest street in the world. We've walked it a few times, each of us at varying points. So another Star Wars legend lining the streets of the sidewalks. But
for sure,
we do miss Carrie Fisher anyway. Of course, she would always be a great presence, especially nowadays with Star Wars fans online. I feel like she would be such a nice level of levity and that sort of thing, because she always poked fun at how serious people took it. But anyway, we do have current Star Wars stuff to talk about. Some interesting stories to get into about future stuff and a bunch of maybes and that sort of thing. And James, you obviously have some cool stuff to get into at the tail end here. So why don't we hop into the Resistance Report?
It's the Resistance.
It was a great voice, John. Resistance Report this week. We have a lot to talk about, as John alluded to. We're going to get started right away with this story about the Acolyte. Now, we all know that Leslye Headland is show running this project. And one thing that we might not have known about Leslye Headland is how big of a fan she actually is of Star Wars, because we often hear like, oh, I grew up with those movies. I've always been a fan. I've always loved them. But in doing this interview with the AV Club, she specifically went into like all these details that really accentuated how much of a fan she has been for a very long time, including playing the games and reading the books, and even down to as she assembles the writing room for the show. She talks about how she gathers everybody up, and we'll get into that in a minute. But very much so, she was the person that was like, oh, you don't know this detail? You don't know what this character looks like? Here, I'll send you this picture. I'll do this. And many times people are like, this isn't your job, but she just is so excited about it. She's already done all this research and stuff that she... was able to pull it off on many different levels. So I guess let's get started with all these things that she mentioned, even dating back to, reading Heir to the Empire, and that being her like kind of break into Star Wars other than the movies themselves. John, what were your thoughts when reading this article, and has this changed your opinion at all, maybe on Leslye Headland?
I liked Russian Doll. I watched that immediately after hearing that she was signed on for Star Wars, and I thought that was an interesting show. I remember us talking about, well, we're not sure how that translates to Star Wars. She may just be doing something completely different, so it's hard to say, oh, this is what we're going to get in Star Wars. But I think this is a sort of a thing where, and we didn't really mince words about this, but she's in PR mode now. She's Her ink is on the dotted line. She is officially a contracted employee of the Walt Disney Company, and she needs to play it right and do the right PR thing here. And because there was a lot of rumblings and stuff of people like bringing up old tweets of hers where she would kind of crap on George Lucas or say bad things about how Star Wars was, and Star Wars didn't do this right, and they should be doing this. And a lot of those tweets got deleted along the way as she probably got the job before it went public, and people took notice of that. And now she's in I want to be doing the right thing mode, and I respect that. She's got the gig and she's going to do her job. I don't think that affects anything about how she's going to do her job. She's clearly a talented person. I will say I was impressed by her level of knowledge of Star Wars. This wasn't a thing where we like kind of poked fun at DJ Older about like, oh, what alien he's going to bring? Of course he's going to say a Gungan, or of course it's going to be she's talking about BBY 325 BBY, and she's bringing up Heir to the Empire, like legend stuff, Timothy Zahn, and she clearly really was a genuine Star Wars fan. This isn't someone saying like, oh yeah, I love Star Wars, and then they like get the bullet points from Lucasfilm on what to say. She clearly was a fan of the franchise, and I do like that. The writing room thing is a little interesting to me. Like, how many people do you need? I get some people do put a team together, but like Jon Favreau's writing room was Jon Favreau, and he had Filoni write an episode or something like that. I get different shows do different things, but the writing room I found interesting. That means it's going to be this very collaborative thing, and sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. Sometimes I could see it putting together a situation where you're like, this doesn't have a voice. And that's a little bit concerning, but yeah, we'll find out when we see. All we know right now is what the name of the show is, when it roughly takes place. Obviously, it's going to be Sith focused, taking place after the High Republic. She seems to like that era. She brought up 325 BBY. She seems to understand what things are like back then, and probably has done more research. So curious to see what happens. I'm keeping an open mind about it. She clearly is talented, but everything she's saying from now forward is going to be under the filter as a dotted line signed contracted Walt Disney Company employee, and good for her.
Lacey, what were your thoughts on reading all this stuff about Leslye?
I was really surprised because usually they, you know, I'm not saying Star Wars Newsnet does this, but a lot of websites will put out an interview and it's like kind of what we're going to get into with Emilia Clarke, where she gives like 4 sentences and you're like, oh, okay, that's the gist of the interview. Whereas this, she goes on and on about certain topics. It was very exciting to hear how much she got into Star Wars, because I feel like it's a general thing that everyone loves the movies. You know, everyone grew up in the movies and they really loved it, but she went even farther than that and got into the books, which, first of all, I think she's going to get Timothy Zahn another book by saying that. I think he just signed another book somewhere in the universe. It's kind of like a bell rings and an angel gets its wings. Every time Timothy Zahn's brought up, he gets another book about Thrawn. So that's cool. But then I really liked her talking about the RPGs because it reminded me of myself, but not in the video game way. The way she talked about how she loved jumping in and kind of putting herself in that world. And like, if a creator in Star Wars isn't creating something like that in the Star Wars universe where you can just jump in and play and imagine yourself in that world, then they're not necessarily doing their job very well, which I found very cool, because it means that she's thinking of everything from, you know, characters to world building to everything else, which we already had a hint of with her explanations of the research that she's done, which she mentioned with YouTube, how she was watching all these YouTube videos, which good luck. There are a lot of YouTube videos out there, good and bad. So I'm interested to know which one she's watched. But I really like that, because growing up myself, I'd always like imagine these adventures, and like that's how dense the Star Wars universe is. So for her to have an understanding of like how much there is and how much you could put into something is just really, really cool. And then, there was an interesting tidbit, like John said, about the writing room, where she said that someone applied and had never seen Star Wars. And she was just like, yeah, that's cool, whatever, which I appreciate, because sometimes you get a great writer, like the guy working on Rogue One in the Andor series, who isn't a big Star Wars fan, but does a great job and guts it and makes it what it is, you know? So, but I laughed when she said the person messaged her and was like, they're brother and sister? I was like, there it is. But it's just really exciting to hear someone be excited to work on Star Wars. And I'm interested to see what she does. I'm going to admit, I was one of the first people that was like, I've seen Bachelorette. I don't know if this is a good fit for Star Wars, but I think that because she has such a background in history and understanding of what Star Wars is and where she wants to take it, that you can't be against that. You know, when she talks about how much work she's put into the writing room and how much she wants everybody to be just as pumped as she is, I'm on board.
Yeah, those are good points. You know, I noticed one thing too, that she talks about the social media aspect of it and how she actually is excited about that and embrace it, which is cool, because like in a way that kind of reminds me of like another Rian Johnson, like someone who was like not afraid of what people are saying about the property online, but like more embraced it. And I think that's more fun to kind of see how that happens and plays out, rather than like a JJ who literally just doesn't say anything,
or says he's gonna do stuff and then is like, kidding.
Well, a little different. Yeah. But no, I think the reason that popped out to me was because of what you said, John, that she had these tweets from before that was like upset with the franchise and stuff. And I tie that into how she's looking at when people are passionate about something, when they care that much about something, they're willing to fight for it. They're willing to argue for it. They're willing to say like, they're willing to criticize where that thing went wrong and the turn. So I think like in a little sense there, she's kind of defending herself. But I think like when you look at it from her being now someone who is a respected showrunner in this case, and getting ready to head into making their own Star Wars thing, you got to look at it in the sense like, I said those things because I felt like I really cared about Star Wars, and I really cared about the characters and the property and how everything was going to be handled. And that is like, when I said those things, I found myself in other people who were criticizing the prequels at that time too, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, look, I'm not a prequel basher by any means, but I think that, as she's saying in this article, like, it's all walks of life. Like, everybody is going to have their different opinions, and that's what is so interesting about Star Wars, is that it creates passionate fans. Yeah, I mean, like, this article is dense, by the way. If you haven't gone and read it, I feel like we're going to skim over so many different things. That writing room thing is interesting to me, too, simply because I feel like you're right, John, that somebody could write the show and they could just do it and that would be their style. But like, if I was writing Star Wars, I absolutely would go with a writing room. I would be like, hey, I got some people that I've worked with before in the past, or just people that I think could help out with this process. And we're going to try to piece together what is a good story and then like try to fit that into and make that good story a Star Wars property. And knowing all the details will help piece it all together. But at the end of the day, I really want this to be something that you don't have to be a Star Wars fan to enjoy. And she's such a Star Wars fan that you almost run the risk, if you do it alone, you start to get too meta with the story, if that makes sense. I think there's that possibility. Are you muted?
No. John might be. John, you're muted, John.
Hi.
Hey, there he is.
430 episodes later, I'm like, oh, how do I do this? Yes, Lacey had brought up the person like that didn't really know Star Wars at all, and I agree. I think to your points, that is a good thing because you can bounce something off of somebody and they could view it just from a blanket narrative standpoint. Does this make sense for a good story? Not, is this good for Star Wars? And I think that's a good thing. There's been plenty of people who've worked on Star Wars over the years that have made some of the best of Star Wars that weren't necessarily big Star Wars fans. I think of Irvin Kershner directing Empire Strikes Back. He just knew how to make that chapter work as a good director. He didn't need to be a great Star Wars fan. Lawrence Kasdan comes in and makes some of the greatest scripts ever, and he just happened to like one of the characters very much and understand how to write that character, know how to write a good story, know how to write characters that like each other. So yeah, I agree. You don't need to love Star Wars to make good Star Wars, and I think having that sort of control in the room or someone you could bounce that stuff off of is not a bad thing. So people might get alarmed and they'll make their focal point about that shows she's bringing people who don't care about Star Wars. It's like, no, that can be a really good thing because, like you said, the meta aspect, and sometimes if you get too tight to something, you lose everything about it.
Yeah. I definitely thought too, there was a line in there too where she said, where she was like, oh, I'll send you a picture. This is what he looks like. I was like, man, I'm getting a real big like Easter egg fan servicey vibe from this show, in the sense of like, hey, this is what was going on. These are all the High Republic books. This is our chance to kind of bring it to the screen. I don't think this necessarily means it's like all the books you've read are now getting a movie made out of them. But I definitely think there's a good chance that some of these characters that we're reading in the books and seeing these like illustrations of and stuff could show up, because you're saying you've not heard of like Stellan Gios, for instance, this is what he looks like, or any one of these other Buckets of Blood, for instance, like, oh, you got to see this character.
I feel like
he looks really cool.
She's definitely leaning into the EU more than High Republic, though, I would bet. And I feel like she's going to go back to those books that she enjoyed in her childhood, and she's making a show that she would want to see. So I totally agree with you. I just don't think it's High Republic. I think it's more on the other like crazy character side of people that like are like, oh my God, I can't believe she brought this person in.
And wasn't she the one that
like
said
a Jackson
her main...
like it won't be Jackson, but like a Jackson type character or something. Yeah.
Like Cobb Vanth. People didn't think they were going to see Cobb Vanth, and Cobb Vanth showed up. Like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then people are buying cardboard cutouts of him. Yeah, I think she was the one who used the Star Wars Atlas as like her basis for how she wanted to tell her story. So
oh, that's right, because she was drawing a path of her character's journey and how it makes
like Indiana
sense.
Jones. Yeah. I
mean, these are good things. I think these are things that make me happy about this series, and I think more and more the series potentially becomes like one of my more anticipated. Pretty exciting.
I'm very, very interested to see what comes out of this. I'm very intrigued. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I am interested to see what happens with Emilia Clarke, because this story actually, it was on Josh Horowitz's podcast. Sad, Happy, Confused. Is that what it is? And
Happy, Sad, Confused.
Happy, Sad, Confused. I knew it was the two. I just couldn't think of what order it was. But Lacey, you actually pointed this out to us. You saw that she was going to be on the show. You went through the process of finding where she talks about Star Wars and stuff and kind of presented it to Star Wars Newsnet. That was really cool. And it was great to hear her, kind of explain how great she feels about the fandom and fans of the show, kind of bringing it back up and keeping it alive, keeping the fun alive. And she even goes into things that we've said multiple times, like she talks about how there was a lot of openness about the production of the show or of the movie. And when people went into the movie, they already had all this dirty laundry, all this baggage headed into the movie itself. And so had that not been involved, she fully believes that the movie would have probably done better as far as reception, monetary value, all that stuff. And we have said that numerous times. So it was really cool to hear that she's kind of a make Solo 2 happenist, if you will, if that's a type of person. But yeah, let's talk about this real quick. Lacey, Emilia Clarke talking about the possibility of Qi'ra showing up again, or maybe not in Lando series.
Yeah, it's interesting because Josh has had a couple people on now. He's had Ron Howard, Alden, and now Emilia Clarke. And each time he brings this up, but doesn't mention make Solo 2 happen. He like dances around it, and he's like, oh, fans really like it. And what he doesn't mention is like, they like it so much that it trended worldwide 3 years in a row. Like, he's not properly
I think he did say that it trended. Yeah, it trended on the anniversary. Did he not? Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't think so.
I
maybe in a different interview,
that.
not in this one. He kind of played it down in this one. But it was interesting to hear her talk about it because she said she's not really on social, which is, I feel like, more and more becoming the norm with people like Emilia Clarke and bigger actors. It's like they just don't want to get involved, which is understandable. Daisy Ridley, Kelly Marie-Tran, all those people are like, nah, I'm good. And then you have John Boyega, who doesn't care, and he's just like posting all the time, responding to people. So to each his own. But it was funny because she said that her brother is the one that kind of tunes her into stuff. And he would be like, no, people really like it. People are really enjoying it. People are starting to like it more. And she'd be like, I'd take his word for it. And I felt like just yelling out loud, like, people love it more than you know. People want you back so bad. But it was cool to hear her talk about it. I feel bad, every time I hear one of the people that were involved talk about the process and like how it didn't do as well as they wanted it to do. But then at the end of the day, you still look at the numbers because people jump to the numbers of the box office. You still look at the numbers and it did better than so many other movies that year. And you're like, it didn't do that bad. But it's in the scale of Star Wars movies, it obviously didn't do
Ron Howard's highest grossing movie of all time.
Yeah, it's just these kind of interviews, like it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Right. It's wonderful because you hear her talk about it and how much she loves it. But you just want to scream or like teleport yourself to the room and be like, no, you don't understand how much we like it. Like, you don't know. And I know that it wasn't included in this article, but she did talk to Hollywood Reporter about Solo, which they did bring up Make Solo 2 happen. They said it campaigned and it trended and all this other stuff on the anniversary, which was nice. Thank you, Hollywood Reporter. That she said that she had thoughts on Qi'ra and had written all these things about Qi'ra and would love to see Qi'ra come back. So I just want her to come back so bad. And I think oftentimes people jump to the conclusion or thought of, oh, we don't need Solo to come back. We just want Qi'ra. But at the end of the day, if you look at the end of the movie and where things kind of didn't wrap up, they were just open-ended. She's kind of the villain now in Han Solo's story. So you need to play that out. And John Kasdan intended for those syndicates, the Pics, the Hutts, and Crimson Dawn to have like a war. That story is sitting there waiting to be told. And it's just, she's a big part of that story. So I think you can have a Qi'ra show on her own, but you need to wrap up some loose ends with the Han Solo stuff first.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
John, what were your thoughts on Emilia Clarke showing up? And Lacey, by the way, real quick, I think that was what I was thinking of, the Hollywood Reporter article, because I know they did mention. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
There's just, like, to me, I don't see any way where an Emilia Clarke or somebody hasn't been made aware of the fan movement. Like, one of her friends is on Twitter having coffee at 10 a.m., like, text her, that movie you were in, it's trending. Like, fans want a sequel. Check it out. And she's like, oh, wow, that's cool. So I think like she has heard of it, like that knows that the fan movement exists. I don't think it's one of those things where she's like, oh, really? You know, but, and she, like you said, she has her brother informing her up to date on what's going on.
I'm surprised you didn't just bring in Daisy Ridley right now.
Right. Daisy Ridley might not know about it. Makes it a little too happen.
I thought about it like that.
She's like, episode 10? All right. Yeah, I don't know with this whole thing, man. It's, well, first off, like, you know, I know we're talking about Makes It a Little Too Happen again on the podcast. The newsflash for people who don't know, it's going to come up every once in a while on our podcast. So just either deal with it or tune out. Sorry. But as far as Emilia Clarke goes, like, it's you add her to the list, you know, of people who are still interested in what's going on here. When there's been so many of these types of franchise types of situations, even in Star Wars, where you have the actor saying like, I'm all set. I'm good. I put my Oscar Isaac, pushing my chips into the table. I'm out. Blah, blah. Every freaking person involved with Solo is like, yeah, I'll come back. Yeah, let's do it. Let's go. John Kazan, I got the stories already. Emilia Clarke, I'm writing treatments for my character. I would love to see her come back. Talk about like Leslye Headland talking about the RPG thing. Emilia Clarke's doing it for Qi'ra right now. She's creating these stories. Ron Howard said I could see it turning around, coming back. All the crew people, anyone from Brian Herring, a puppeteer, all the way to the art people, Hal Hickel, who works at ILM, everybody involved, Jonas Sotomo, go down the line. Alden Ehrenreich said he has a perfect idea of how he would play Han Solo if he came back. This isn't like this fan pipe dream of like, it's never going to happen, guys. They're not interested. Like, everyone involved is interested. It's just Disney saying like, look, that was the first round. That's on us. We're going to buy the next round. And we're going to do it right for you guys.
But
and
John,
that's all it's going to take.
Don't you want a Tower of Terror movie with Scarlett Johansson instead? Or a Jungle Cruise movie?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, or Hocus Pocus 2 coming to Disney Plus. That movie made $6 at the box office. Don't tell me about box office bombs, please. But yeah, it's just this whole interesting phenomenon, and you know, clearly the buzz is still there from fans 3 years later. So when people say like, it's being a bit overdone, it's like, no, it's not. You know, it took Clone Wars 7 years of fans asking for it to come back, and we're on year 3 of Solo, and I think there's plenty of breathing room. And the best part of it is, if they do it on Disney Plus, like you said, Lacey, say they do a Qi'ra series. The Qi'ra fans are happy. They get Maul. You get Han and Chewie working for Jabba. You get stuff going on with the, you know, the other syndicates involved, Pics, whatever you want to do. You can intertwine and have crossovers. Like Han's going to show up in the Qi'ra show. Kira's going to pop in on the Han show. And it doesn't have to be multiple seasons for each of these shows. You can do one season for each and make it work in that way. Sort of like, I'm not saying like a Pulp Fiction where we're jumping timelines, but having people cross over, that type of thing to me adds the suspension of disbelief layers to loving these stories. Like, oh my God, I just saw that character on this show doing this thing, and now they're popping up over here because they just left that spot. Like, it adds so much enriched awesomeness to Star Wars, and I think it's just all set up beautifully. And the fact that now you have Emilia Clarke saying she would love to come back, and acknowledging the fact that, yeah, it's one of those situations where people, a lot of people I feel like viewed it with our dirty laundry and she's talking about the production stuff that happened. And she's saying a lot of people couldn't detach themselves from that, but I like seeing the fact that people are embracing it as that aspect of it faded. And we had talked about that even before Solo came out on the pod, or when Solo came out, and we were talking about how, yeah, this stuff is white hot right now in terms of what happened. But as we move on forward, the movie's still going to be here. And all that stuff's going to be way back down in ancient history. And the movie's going to age very well. And it really has been, because we're seeing more and more, fan movement aside, we're seeing more and more people saying like, you know, I never really gave Solo a shot, or I watched it again recently. Man, that movie is a good time, or really liked it. So it's just good to hear we're adding Emilia Clarke to the list to check her off as someone who is vested in, you know, returning, revisiting the character. And then you have the comic stuff about Qi'ra facing off with the Han and Carbonite. Like, clearly they're internally exploring that idea that romance angle isn't necessarily over, even though clearly they went separate ways at the end of Solo. So there's a lot to be done here, a lot to be explored, and I would love to see her back, because Emilia Clarke is awesome across the board.
Yeah, it's interesting too because we talk about it being a movie versus the show or whatever, and I think we're all down for the show. But the thing to me that is the most surprising is like, I feel that there's a big argument out there for if for whatever reason we're sitting in the room with Disney and all the people who make those decisions, I think they could give a pretty good argument as to why they don't want to move forward with a movie, right? But I feel it's a lot harder to explain why they might not want to move forward with the television series, because that to me is a good way, especially off of Mandalorian and Mandalorian season 2, getting praise reviews. And then as we're headed into Book of Boba Fett, you got to think they're confident about that too. And like Obi-Wan and Andor, they're putting a lot of budget into that. It just seems that if everybody who is a basic Star Wars fan is going to have this Disney Plus subscription and they're probably going to check out that show, there's a pretty good chance that they're going to do the show and they're going to grow with the characters and be excited and get into the speculation week to week, which only then furthers the possibility for people to go back and revisit the film and be like, maybe I was hard on it. And that to me just doesn't, I don't see why they wouldn't, like, I get where they're like, oh, it was we had a rough time with it. We maybe don't want to revisit that, but this is an opportunity for you to say, but this is going to build on, and it's going to make your property look even better or bigger,
Yeah.
And we talked, Lacey brings up all the time, the Netflix thing, how sometimes they do like a season 2, even if a show's a flop, because it makes it look like it's bigger. It's like, I don't understand why they wouldn't be able to announce, hey, we're doing this show, and even say like fans demanded it or whatever. If they want to do that, they don't have to. But it leads into them saying like, we see a lot of success in this. We're very proud of what we've done, and it warrants a sequel, So I don't know. It's crazy to me that it hasn't happened yet. But like you said, John, we'll just add Emilia Clarke to a long list of people who want it involved too. And I had one other thing too, and that's, you don't need to bring back everybody. Like right now, it seems like you need Alden, Emilia, and then probably like maybe Ray Park. That'd probably be
Jonas.
about it. Yeah, Jonas too. But it's like, but I'm saying like you don't need to bring back so, like,
well, everyone
Donald
else is
Glover,
dead.
for instance. Yeah. Well,
Except
I'm saying,
Lando.
yeah, you don't have to bring him back.
Poor
You
Beckett.
don't have to bring Beckett. You don't have to bring back Dryden Voss. These characters. Those were actually your biggest people, and they've self-written themselves out of the story. Like they don't have to be involved at all. So it's like,
Yeah,
I don't know. It's crazy. We can move on. Oh, you got something?
Real quick though, I do wish these people who have these opportunities to score these big interviews and stuff, like Jake Hamilton, like just say make Solo 2 happen. It's okay. Like let them use it's okay to say it. Like I feel like they're acting like it's Beetlejuice or Rumpelstiltskin or something. Like just throw the fans a bone here. You got the platform. Like help out the cause. That's all I'm saying.
I just find it interesting that in interviews they can bring up shipping names and other things, but they can't bring up something that's like, hey, these people really like what you did with this project, and they made a hashtag, and they're like, nah.
Right.
Nah.
You're gonna ask J.J. Abrams about Constable Zuvio. Throw a fan movement a bone. That's all I'm saying.
We got more pictures. Next story. We got more pictures from the Star Wars Andor set. Now this actual, the pictures that we're talking about right now are from a location that we've already looked at, but they were kind of covered up. They weren't fully prepared yet. And the person who took the photos before, if I'm not mistaken, has now returned to the site, and they're like, oh, well, they're set up. They're ready to go. You can very clearly see all the different props and stuff that they've used. So we just kind of want to take an opportunity because, I think we've gone like a whole week without Andor set leaks. So, we had to catch up on this one. John, I'll jump back to you on this one just because I think you know the most about the details of where and why this is kind of important in the production.
I mean, this looks very Star Wars to me. It looks like some sort of base and, somewhere where there may be some sort of climactic action to the show. Clearly, a lot of these things look very familiar to turrets in like The Empire Strikes Back on Hoth, and similar aesthetics that would be around for the Galactic Civil War era of Star Wars. So I like that. A lot of green here, which to me usually indicates a rebel base of some kind, because last I checked, the Empire doesn't like nature. So to me, this looks like it's going to be on the rebellion side of that. I mean, when have you really seen? I haven't seen it. An Imperial base is usually in a very gray and cold. Yeah, very gray and cold space. But yeah, I don't know. I'm guessing this is some sort of rebellion sort of location. That'd be my guess. But I do find it interesting because now we're approaching late June, and I believe the report was that they're going to be filming into July. So this may be towards the tail end of the location shoot element of it, and obviously they're doing stuff at Pinewood as well. But again, it gets you excited because it's that same old adage that, Star Wars is changing, and, gone are going to be the days of the big location shoots and the giant set constructs and that sort of thing. And here's Andor just saying like, nah, man, like we're going big on this one. So it's very cool and it's very exciting. And I feel like out of all the Star Wars shows, like Mandalorian still felt big because they had just massive special effects, like the Crate Dragon and the giant, Star Destroyer-esque ship in the 3rd episode of season 2, and everything that was going on throughout those 2 seasons. But it did feel like it still had that TV feel to it, which I know they were going for. I feel like Andor is just going to really feel like a theatrical Star Wars movie on TV. Like more than anything, more than any of these shows that are coming up. And I think it's going to be because of the grand scale of this stuff. And I'm very excited about that. That's all I really got. I think this is cool. This reminds me of the old days when people were creeping on, TFA sets and that sort of thing and getting like a picture of a chair and saying like, oh, what is that?
Or cool. Rise of Skywalker when they're like, look at all these little things that are standing out in the desert. Like, what are they?
Yes, like the cardboard cutouts of right. Or the when people thought on our commentary for TLJ, people thought like those stones were like graves on Octo, and it was just rocks.
Yeah,
it's funny.
Lacey, I kind of forget. Do you get into these set photos? Do you enjoy looking at them? Because I know you like production stuff, but it's also kind of leaky.
This stuff doesn't necessarily bother me. I think the leak thing, let me straighten this out before it gets too crazy. The leak thing that I have problems with is when character stuff gets leaked. Like if character appearances get leaked, if story gets leaked, that's when it bothers me. And I think that's when it bothers a lot of fans, because people want to be genuinely surprised and get invested in the story before it happens or not before it happens. They want to be in it when it's happening. And I think I always go back to it. The biggest example of that is Baby Yoda. Like I'll never get that moment back again, as in the reveal of it and how excited and wonderful and awesome it was. So I just am like craving / wanting that feeling again. Yeah. And I feel like season 2 of The Mandalorian, a little bit got taken away from people leaking things. That being said, this kind of stuff doesn't bother me at all. It's super cool. I love sets. I love production. People always ask us, I think, often like, what would your dream job be? I think location scout is pretty cool. Is a pretty cool job in Star Wars that you just get to go around and be like, this looks like Star Wars. Yes, I think this will work. And you just get to travel and take pictures of cool places like this reservoir in the Scottish Highlands. Like the fact that this person drove this dirt road and was like, this looks Star Warsy. You know what? I'm going to shoot here. I think a location scout would be a really, really cool job.
Just like putting things in your budget that doesn't make any sense. Like, think about this spot in Hawaii that just might be right.
Like Adam Sandler. Sandler just shooting where he wants to take vacations, and Netflix is like, okay. He's like, I'm going to go to Morocco for this mystery movie. And they're like, okay. And he's like, and I'm going to fly all my friends out for this Moroccan vacation.
Adam, you can't do that. He's like, they're like, okay.
You can't do that. And then they did it.
Are either of you Lonely Island fans?
Yeah. I mean, probably not recent, like older stuff.
Oh,
like their original
was older.
stuff.
Yeah. But they did a song called Japan. And in the song, they're just naming things. They're like, now we're in Japan. Now we're in Egypt. Now we're drinking, because they knew that they were going to make a video for it.
Oh,
and the
they wanted
label
to
was going
go.
to pay for it. Yeah. So they're like, now we're drinking expensive sake. Now we're in 5 Lamborghinis. And like, they just said, it's so funny. Like everything they say in the song is specific to be like the most ridiculous, expensive video. But yeah.
I love a lot of their songs. I still think my favorite is I'm on a Boat, and then followed by Jack Sparrow is like one of my
Jack Sparrow.
yeah.
Oh my
It's
god.
so good with Michael Bolton. Anyway, but yeah, so I think this location scout job would be pretty sweet. So hook me up, Lucasfilm. I would totally do it. That being said, this looks very beautiful, very picturesque. Like I can see it already. The tweets being like, like how beautiful is the aesthetic of the Andor series, or like highlights from the Andor episode, whatever. And they show like landscape shots on Twitter. I'm already seeing that with this because it's just so stunning. So as always, I'm excited. I'm glad that the production's still going. So let's do this.
I know these photos were taken just like with a cell phone or whatever, but it's like when you see that green, you're just like, mwah, like it's just the saturation.
Yes.
It's just so, it's so green and brown at the same time, like the mud and the stone and the ground and everything. Just, it feels so good.
The gray versus the green, yeah.
And
the flyovers in the beginning of Rogue One, like you feel like you're on Soarin' at Disney World. Like it's such a cool, atmosphere.
It's funny, you're so right with this, Lacey, too, as far as like these types of leaks go, because like we can sit here and look at this and study, and when you're watching the show, it's gonna be like that guy, and he's gonna be like boom, and then like that's it. That's
or the scene could get cut. There's been tons of locations and stuff that get cut, so it's whatever.
That one like facility with the gun on the top is like a quick shot, just to show like the outside.
Yeah.
And then we might not even see a full scope. Like the reason there's a physical set there is so that a guy can stand on top of there and move the gun around. But this could be a complete digital castle or base that doesn't have to have any sort of human interaction or something. They could just add in with a computer later, but they needed some of these physical structures. So it's almost like
the reservoir looks like a base.
Yeah, it just looks like you're looking at like one corner potentially of what could be something really cool and stunning. I definitely remember when we got like Canto bite leaks and stuff, and it's like or other things where they're like walking down the streets, and it's like, yeah, they cover up the doors, and you can see the doors and the archways and stuff like that look very familiar, but it gives you no visualization of what ends up being this final grand product, because they just pop in all this extra CG stuff behind it.
Or sometimes it is just that, though. Like The Force Awakens, Dakar, remember those helicopter shots, and you saw the Falcon and Poe's X-Wing, and it's just like, oh, that looks kind of like the Yavin 4 temple, and then in the movie they're just like, yeah, that's it. But you're right. I hope it's something cool for sure.
Yeah, that's pretty much all the major stories that happened this week in Star Wars. I do want to mention too that I did get the opportunity to sit down with Brad Rowe, Jennifer Corbett, and Ming-Na Wen from Bad Batch. They did a little press junket and kind of a round table where we were allowed to ask questions and kind of talk about the show with a lot of other podcasts and websites and things like that. So it was actually really awesome. And a lot of the coverage for that is on StarWarsNewsNet.com. You can check that out. Also a little bit in my Bad Batch recap that I did on Friday. So if you haven't yet gone and checked that out, big episode this week, which surprises me not at all that they decided to get ahead of it and share the episode and do a press junket with a lot of the press and stuff. So I hope everybody's watching the Bad Batch, and if you want to see more about the behind the scenes of it all, go check out StarWarsNewsNet.com.
How wonderful is Ming-Na? She's absolutely wonderful.
Oh,
she's
so
the best.
nice. Yeah. And like we were saying earlier, like a big Star Wars fan too. I think like she's very happy to be involved in this series, and saying, I guess I'll say one of the things is that she was very excited to be offered the role, and she was like, my character dies so quickly, like, all right, but I just want to be in Star Wars. I want to be able to cross that off my bucket
That means
list.
she didn't know she was coming back. I knew more than Ming-Na.
Yeah. So she says she's very excited now that she decided to make that decision at the time, because not only did she get to be in season 1, she got to be in season 2. Now they're bringing her in a Bad Batch. Now they're doing Book of Boba Fett. It's just,
Remember the hysteria after she died, and they're like, they got Ming-Na Wen, and they're gonna kill her after this one episode.
Not me.
And now she's literally in everything. Yeah.
I was the lone person being like, guys, they didn't show her face. She's fine.
Yeah, you don't get a big star like that and then knock her out. But
you don't do that to Mulan. Get out of here.
James, just how kind of like she's in her like late 50s. How the youthful energy she has is very inspiring, for one thing.
Yeah, she's gorgeous.
2, her answer was just so funny. Like when she answered your question, she goes, I also like her because, she marches to the beat of her own drum, and she's very inspiring, especially for, young women. I get that she's an assassin. We're just going to let that go.
Don't pay attention to the fact that she's a bounty hunter and a murderer. Like,
she's inspiring,
she plays in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. too, as like someone that could just kill you.
But we are going to talk a lot about more of the implications of this on Thursday, where we're going to be joined by coming back. Our buddy Ashi Bashar from Beartooth is coming back. We're going to talk to him about obviously their new album, but he's a huge Star Wars fan. You probably watched our episode with him doing chapter 15 of The Mandalorian on the Mando Fan Show this past December. He's coming back, and we're going to talk to him on Thursday about a lot more of this and how this weaves into, Boba Fett and all that sort of stuff. So it's going to be a good chat on Thursday.
Absolutely. Well, Lacey, you said you are a loner when it comes to thinking that Ming-Na Wen was dead, but I can tell you one thing you are not alone in, and that is our Patreon, the Resistance
I was
officers,
wondering how
and
you
everything
were
about the base.
Tie that back. It was a nice try. Guys, time for the Patreon pod race. So there are lots of different ways you can support us. You can follow us on Twitter at RBATSWNN. You can follow us on Instagram at The Resistance Broadcast. Or if you want more content from us, including tons of mini episodes every week, live Q&As, live watch-along commentaries with The Mandalorian and movies, you can head over to patreon.com/resistance broadcast. Starting at only $2 a month, you get access to the page and you get to engage with other people in the community. But as you go up in the ranks, you get more benefits and cool stuff like Discord, mailings, and then you get to be a part of the show sometimes. And this is one of those segments where we have our generals be a part of the show. So first of all, I want to give a thank you to our generals and spice runners. So starting with our generals, we have CARMELO, Andrew Staley, Jeremy Myers, NEEL SHAH. Nope. Muscle memory.
Did that again.
John RISI, JETTA Rosewater, Michael Gates, Paul Olsen, Jake Houchins, Oliver Lewis, Frank Grande, Has Islam, Joe Ritchie, Darth Hurricane, Timothy Hill, John Chorlton, Nick Kratz, Christian Morales, and Val Trichkoff. You know how many times I've had to do this that my brain just automatically knows Neil's next?
Do you want me to scramble them?
Maybe you're going to have to. Okay, and then thanks to our Spice Runners, David Probus, NEEL SHAH,
there he is.
Double C, aka Chris, KENDALL, GELNER, Ryan WAARA, Dave HORNAK, and MICAH Harrison. Thank you guys so much for your support. It means so much to us. Man. So this week we have Andrew Staley, the lovely Andrew Staley is back, and we asked him, if you find out that you can use the Force, would you ever use it to your advantage in real life situations? If so, give an example of when you'd use it. So Andrew, take it away.
Thanks, guys. If I had the Force, 2 things that came to mind. One would be Force healing. I would love to have the ability to be able to help people, obviously. The other thing would be the reactions or the reflexes, to be able to use it more in traffic, dealing with poor drivers and things like that. And even then, there's a potential it could lead into a racing career. So that'd be kind of cool to have something like that. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it. And may the Force be with you.
Nice job, Andrew. By the way, you've been posting pictures of your cats online. Please keep doing that. John, what do you think?
Well, Andrew, in typical Andrew fashion, because he's such a good guy, made me feel like a schlub, because I was like, oh, I'll get out of speeding tickets. I'll get to the front of a line. And Andrew's first response is, I would hopefully be able to learn the healing power so that I could help people. And I'm like, oh, I'm a horrible person. So Andrew says that, but then he did also say quick reactions and instincts so that it can help me in traffic in case there are bad drivers out there, and that he could maybe also parlay that into a racing career. I know he's a huge racing fan.
Nice,
so
that's cool.
Andrew, I would only imagine if you had the ability to use the Force in a high top circuit racing circuit, you would be unstoppable. So, and you could probably like get rid of the lug nuts using the Force and stuff. You could really just make your way to the front without even having to fail an inspection like some drivers have recently. But as always, man, and great background, by the way, as always, unbelievable. But thank you for a great answer on both sides of the aisle. You did get the good person version and also the little selfish version. So I like the balance of the Force you did there. But as always, thanks so much for your support. It's always an honor that you have chosen to support us because you're that amazing of a Star Wars fan. And I'll say this every time you do a pod race, if all Star Wars fans were like you, everyone would want to be a Star Wars fan. So thank you, Andrew.
James?
So yeah, I agree with you, John. That I wasn't so selfless with my thought too, but I always think of levitation. I think that's the number one thing. I remember I used to work in shipping and logistics and stuff, and I was always, man, as soon as we could just like lift every box, regardless of weight, and put it on shelves and stuff, huge, like big difference. So when I was thinking, if I had the Force, that would be the first thing I would think about is like my ability to move large objects quickly and things, and probably work. Helping those types of people out, but Andrew Staley here saying, I get the Force healing, that's a big thing, but a racing career, I don't know, man, that might be a little shady. Isn't that considered performance enhancing religion or something? Like you kind of are cheating. Everybody else doesn't have those special skills. I don't know. But I think your heart is in the right place. Absolutely, as always. Great job on the podcast, and good answers on both parts, honestly. Yeah. Thanks.
Andrew, great answer. Love your background. Love your hat. Very cool. Still waiting for my time to go to Galaxy's Edge eventually. Your answer is wonderful, and it speaks to you as a person and such a caring individual. My panic and anxiety as a Star Wars fan was you can only give so much energy to people when you're healing them, as per Rey and what we learned from Ben Solo. So my panic was, oh my God, you'd give all your energy away and then you would die. So I don't want that to happen. So maybe do a little healing, but then racing's good. Unless you regenerate it. I don't know. We don't know that far.
What if he just heals like little birds or something?
He said people. He wants to help people.
Maybe just their pinky or something.
That reminds me.
I'm not saying it's not a great idea.
Actually.
I'm just saying I panicked because I was like, what if he gives away all his energy? That was in the 10 seconds of watching your video. That's what I thought, because I'm crazy. Anyway, thank you so much for being awesome. Again, keep posting pictures of your cats, Ray and Luke. I love them, even though they're not my cats. And now we're going to head back to John.
All right. So, yeah, we have a few minutes left here, and sometimes we like to just chit-chat. So, James, real quick, that whole, press thing, you've done them for us in person. You've done them virtually. I think we've all had the opportunity to do stuff like that. Lacey obviously doing all the Hasbro stuff for us and getting the latest on that. I got to do the thing for the holiday special with the Anthony Daniels. The aspect of not having to travel, is that worth doing it via virtual for you? Or would you rather be like, I'm going to go to the thing, meet the person, sit in front of them? Like, what is there a balance there for you? I know some people think about it, but I'm curious what you think about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely one of those things where it's like, hey, you get this really cool exclusive opportunity that there's probably zero chance you're going to have to pass on. You know what I mean? Because you're just going to be able to do it, from home and be involved in that way, just the same as everybody else. It's not like some people are going and then you're going to be able to like webcam in or whatever. So that is definitely cool. But I will say, like, there's something to the experience, absolutely, of being like, gotta go to California, like that's how it is, and being taken out there. Like, it's funny because they had for this particular thing, they had like a separate Zoom room that was like hospitality room where you can kind of like hang out before things happen. And I'm like, hospitality room. It's kind of, I mean, it's cool. We're hanging out and we're meeting people and kind of discussing how things are going to go down. But obviously, like a hospitality room at, you know, a different event, like an actual press junket, is incredibly different. You know, I mean, there's things for you to own. They give you, you can take pictures, you get to see outfits, and they feed you like this crazy food and stuff. And it's just a really entirely different experience. So I don't know. And I'm sure Lacey can speak to that type of stuff when it comes to, like conventions and things like that too, like how you treat guests that are there to like sign and do press and stuff.
Yeah, I've been more on the other side. Like I set up said room.
Yeah.
I don't get to go to said room. But I mean, I miss traveling. It's been a long time, and it probably will be still more for me personally, but I look forward to the time that we get to go do stuff again, which is interesting because, you know, I do the Hasbro stuff, and I've gone to New York Comic Con and met them at Comic Cons in the past, and they're really nice. They're actually not that far from where I live, so I'm waiting for the day that they're like, hey, why don't you take a trip up here and come see stuff? What up, Patrick?
Are they in Connecticut?
They're in Rhode Island.
Oh, okay.
They're across from the Dunkin' Donuts Center. Their building's like literally across the street.
They're one
that's
of
why there's such a
three,
big presence at
people
like
that
Rhode
live in
Island
Rhode
Con.
Island.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I definitely miss the events and stuff like that, but it's got to be cool to be like, yeah, I talked to Migna when and I was wearing flannel pajamas. You know, you just like you come downstairs, turn on your thing, you're like, now I'm talking to someone who's in Star Wars. It's pretty wild. Like I got to ask Anthony Daniels a question, and I was probably wearing the same exact pajama pants that I'm wearing right now, and it's just like that's cool. But I also do miss I'm not a big travel person. Like I'll never drive more than 5 hours. A flight that's 6 hours, I start getting a little cranky, which is the flight to LA for like me and Lacey. But I do miss it, and I would never want to trade that. Like I still would like the opportunity because you do other things too. Like you get to try to meet up with other people that you know. Like
I like
Lacey,
networking.
Lacey, one of the best times we had when we went out for the premiere of Rise of Skywalker, I think, was the night at Scum and Villainy, where we got to hang with Clayton and a bunch of friends.
Yeah,
it was a great
packed.
night, and you don't do that if it's just like here's a screener of a movie. That's it. So
yeah, the networking's probably my big thing. Just meeting people.
Yeah, the human. I love hanging out with people. I love being surrounded by people and the conversation, the laughs, and just the human exchange that you can't replicate via a Zoom call. And, we obviously do our podcast that way, but when we get together, I feel like we have such a great time. And so I do like that we have the opportunity to do those things now. And we got to do the Schmodown thing because of it and all that stuff. And I get that and I like that. But I also like the fact that, thinking about celebration, like you said, Lacey, I can't wait till, TRB, we get to go do stuff again. And now, like, the way we've been growing, like, we can really, like, lick our chops and, like, go do stuff. And I'm very excited about that because so you almost, like, forget about that for a while. It's like, where are my jeans? I got to go find them. And we have to go do stuff.
I'm going to be so awkward to start, at least, because of the whole pandemic and everything. You, like, don't... What is people?
Oh, yeah.
We're the only people at Celebration with face shields. Like everybody else has moved past it.
What's that band? That band that broke up?
I might be the only one. I'm like the weirdo that's like still masking up and everything.
That band that broke up, are you talking about Daft Punk?
Daft Punk. That's
oh my God.
Daft Punk. Yeah.
I can't believe that happened, by the way.
Yeah. You'll be fine. You're very good at Celebration. So like once you walk in and you get your pretzel and you take your first bite and someone says, Lacey Gilleran, and you're like, huh? And
I'll never forget that out of all the things that could have happened, it's me stuffing my face.
It's going to be like riding a bike. It's going to be like riding a bike. It's going to be a good time. All right. Well, we are up on time for this episode. So any final words for our listeners out there? You want to say a little hellos or thanks or love yous or anything?
You guys are the best.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out this long. Like,
yeah,
YouTube retention, right?
yeah, right. Yes, well, speaking of which, thanks to everybody who has been subscribing to the show, whether that is YouTube or our podcast platforms everywhere. It's crazy the fact that we have a Discord on our Patreon where people talk, and there's people literally from Australia talking to people from England, talking to people from France that are talking to people from Iowa, and they all met because of this silly little podcast we do, and that's amazing. So I want to thank everybody for being a part of TRB. Make sure you do subscribe if you haven't yet. It's free wherever you prefer, whether it's on video or audio. And also, like James said before, StarWarsNewsNet.com for all of your Star Wars news, reviews, editorials, information, and more. And all of that coverage from that presser event with Ming-Na Wen and the Bad Batch showrunners. You can find me on Twitter at Johnny Hoey and at StarWarsNewsNet.com, and my movie podcast, Just Like the Movies, where me and my best friend Mike talk about old movies of a simpler time in our lives. James?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Myra Trunks, as well as the Bad Batch, like we talked about earlier. But even more specifically, tomorrow we're going to drop a couple videos having to do with some High Republic books as we do our book discussions for Star Wars Newsnet, and that's with Kyle Larson. We're going to be talking about Rising Storm, so I'm pretty excited about that one when it comes out.
Very good. Yeah, it's a good way to keep up with that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Lacey, what's going on?
People can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lacey Gilleran. And then also this week, I'll be putting out another Lacey's Outpost with stuff that I forgot I purchased that showed up at my house.
So surprises? You can't say what it is yet?
That's the best thing that comes in the mail.
It's the Stormtrooper helmet. First Order Stormtrooper helmet.
Oh, nice. Does it filter out smoke?
I don't know. I haven't opened it yet. Saving it for the video.
Right on. All right. So, so like we said before, Thursday, we're going to be joined by Ashi Bashar of Beartooth, having a good time talking Star Wars, specifically some Boba Fett stuff. So be sure to join us on Thursday. But until then, enjoy your weeks, and we'll see you then right here on the Resistance broadcast. We'll see you around, kids.